We cannot continue to just go along with this because it's our only option.
My year, it was Rage Against the Machine.
Yeah.
Now it feels like it's where's the machine at so we can listen to whatever it says.
Man, that's good.
How far away is that?
You will face that challenge before this year is up here in Tennessee.
You believe that?
100%.
What's up, guys? JSlay, made in the USA, and I am tired. I'm coming at you from a completed roofing project for a big county library. Pretty roof job, if I don't say so myself. The reason I'm doing this today is because we all have busy lives. We all have jobs that we've got to fulfill, responsibilities to our customers, to our bosses, employers, what have you, responsibilities to our families, to our kids. We got to bring home the bacon, don't we? That's why I'm so excited to bring you my next guest. This next guest name is Gary Humble. Gary Humble has taken a leadership role in pushing back against the Marxist socialist change that we're seeing all around us. And he's got a lot to say about how to engage the fight locally and how to engage the fight in your own life. He left a very lucrative business and went full-time, probably took a major pay cut in order to ensure that our American rights are secured by our own government that is sworn to protect them. So more people need to do what my man Gary's doing. I hope you enjoy this next video. And feel free to look at the description and find the spot that most interests you for your life right now. Thanks, guys. Enjoy the interview. What's up, guys? This is JSlay, made in the USA, coming at you from my home office right here in Franklin, Tennessee. And excited and humbled to be here with my new friend, Gary Humble. Gary, thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. So one of the reasons I'm really excited about having Gary Humble here with us today is, when the government does not stand up for, and provide for their obligation of protecting our rights as citizens, it takes people to step out and make that known. And, Gary, you didn't start out as a political guy, right? You started out as a pastor in Texas. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so went to Bible college as a young man and was a pastor for quite some time, about almost 15 years, mainly worship pastor, music guy. But then a little bit later on in life, did what every pastor does, kind of a natural progression into starting a microbrewery.
That's always.
Totally natural thing to do. But had a really successful microbrewery for about 5 years in the state of Texas. And actually that was an interesting time because that's sort of where I got really political. There's a lot of regulation, as you can imagine, in the beer industry, and some fights that happened between the small guy and the big guy, and all these regulatory things. And so really filed a lawsuit against the state of Texas, and so tend to not averse to those types of battles. But in any case, moved here to Tennessee and got really involved in public policy. I began working with the legislature.
Let me ask you, did you plan to do that when you came here? Was that on your agenda, or did you see a need?
I saw a need, I suppose. It definitely wasn't a plan, and it actually was a connection through a men's group at church. Okay. That they were looking to be a little bit more active in that space, and so I came on and began working in public policy. And through that experience, later on, COVID happened, which was the birth of Tennessee Stands, which we're doing now, to really challenge the constitutionality of the way we see our government working now through what some of us call a public health crisis.
Right. And you're directly affected by this because you have 3 boys. Now they were or are in the Williamson County school system.
And my 2 older boys were in Williamson County schools. Of course, we're homeschooling now. All the shenanigans that are going on in our schools. It's incredible. We talk about the learning loss that our children have experienced through this season. And those wounds are self-inflicted, quite frankly. So,
what was the linchpin or the straw that broke the camel's back to lead you to say, hey, enough's enough, or I've got to speak out, or I've got to pull my kid? What was the thing that happened maybe last summer, spring?
Yeah, it was last July, I believe. I think for so many of us in March, when everything started happening, no one was really sure how we should respond. 2 weeks to flatten the curve, 30 days to whatever, and everyone was sort of trying to figure things out. I think as we got into the 3rd month, the 4th month, people were starting to get wary of what's going on. For me, it was whenever the school system put out the reopening framework, which was a plan of, beginning in August going through the following school year, of wearing masks and quarantine protocols and all the, and when I think for me in my mind, the switch flipped whenever I saw a plan that was now a year out.
Right.
And I realized in that moment, okay, yeah, this isn't just going away. This isn't just going to magically disappear.
Right. And by that point, we had access to the data showing us that kids, especially of that age group, young kids, were not susceptible, number one.
That's right.
And on the second, we were getting more and more data that they're not really spreaders.
Not spreaders. That's
right.
correct.
So, I mean, we could understand it if it was polio and you got people running around dying. But
and imagine how much more of that data from around the world we have today.
Right.
And we're still doing this.
So they're still there. They've got their feet planted.
Oh, yeah.
Wow. Okay, well, I understand that. And, I was always a public school guy. Being a baseball player, I wanted to play baseball at the highest level, and, public school was kind of the way to do that. Then college, went to a big Division I college because, again, like that's where the biggest and the best of baseball was going to be. And I always thought, hey, America may get a little more progressive, but it won't change that much.
Yeah.
But here we sit, and there's no way.
Especially in baseball, right?
Yeah. Oh, my gosh, that's a whole nother issue, which we will get on. Thank you for bringing that up. But now there's no way. I mean, my wife, has talked to me about it. She was a public school girl. Now, no chance. So we're going private as well when the time comes.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about the business side of things. So, you left being a music worship leader, pastor, and got into the brewery business. Mm-hmm. Talk a little bit about the ins and outs of just your experience growing a business. It was a small business, right?
Yeah, we grew to about 40 employees. It was a rocket ship right up front. We did $2 million our first year.
Through great marketing, you put your face on everything.
I think good marketing maybe and good beer. I think I hope
that would matter.
Yeah, we got named best beer in Dallas pretty quickly. We had our beers in almost every Kroger across the state of Texas, and things were just sort of really rocking and rolling. And what you found really fast though is that to make it in the wholesale game, just like any other industry, you're fighting against the larger powers that be that have had a grip on that market for a long time.
Sure.
And
well, who would that have been? I mean, you're talking major.
Anheuser-Busch.
Okay,
oh yeah. Oh,
absolutely. So big boys.
Well, you look at $100 billion industry, and they've got 95% of it. Your large brewers, your Coors, and so anyway, it's a hard industry. The regulatory landscape in Texas is very difficult to navigate. And they have a strong lobby. I mean, you literally see that in the fights that I'm in now, where I'm now here in Tennessee, I'm in public policy trying to secure religious exemptions to vaccines and dealing with all these types of legislation. And now in this scenario, I'm going up against the healthcare lobby. That's incredibly powerful, in the state of Tennessee. So it's actually interesting how similar it is when you get into legislative activity and regulatory activity, and you see the power of these lobby groups and the money that's being poured in as you meet with legislators. At first you think, well, gosh, this seems like such a simple thing. I should be getting my way here. Yeah. You start digging through campaign finances and learning about these lobbying relationships, and you start to get a picture of why things aren't quite going your way.
That's interesting. I guess there's carryover in a lot of life, but it sounds to me like there was a lot of lessons learned through the gatekeepers of the big beer industry, and they're now fighting, Tennessee legislative things. And,
very similar, shockingly.
Wow. How did you know how to do it? Did you learn? I mean, because what were you doing here in Tennessee prior to starting Tennessee Stands? And if you don't mind, explain Tennessee Stands as well.
Yeah. So prior, I was a CEO of an organization called the Family Action Council of Tennessee, which is primarily a family policy group. So laws dealing with marriage, abortion, anything dealing with, like, for example, we just passed a bill here in Tennessee with transgender issues in athletics in schools. So all of these sort of traditional values, family values policies, I was very involved in working with the legislature, understanding how those policies work. Learned a lot. And so enter Tennessee Stands. Whenever we declared our emergency here in Tennessee, I just noticed our government was no longer a constitutional form of government. Even here in Tennessee, you've got a governor who's now making law. Well, governors don't Governors don't make laws. You've got a governor who's unilaterally shutting down businesses and by the stroke of a pen defining people as non-essential. You've got a governor with the stroke of a pen telling people that they all need to stay home, and you start looking at constitutional concepts like the freedom to peaceably assemble and the right to earn a living and support your family and all these things. And so Tennessee Stands was born out of like, wait a minute, we're losing this thing way too fast. And if we can't get this right in Tennessee,
it's going to come like a freight train everywhere else.
In Tennessee,
right?
That if we should be getting this right anywhere in the country, I tend to hold this state to a higher standard. And
thank you for that.
So that's what we're trying to do.
Well, that brings up a great point. I think if people understood their own government, which it seems like today it's almost enforced that they don't. But if your common man understood what the Constitution was for, and you said this very well off camera, where hey, the role of our Constitution is to protect our inalienable rights, rather than control us. And I think, what did you tell me the other day? You said, hey, if 9 out of 10 people on the street would say what if that's the role of government?
Yeah. So if you went to do a man on the street interview and you asked folks, hey, where do your rights come from? Probably 9 out of 10 people would tell you, well, my rights come from the Constitution, the Bill of Rights. That's the problem with where we are right now, because what that does is signal a belief that people believe that their rights come from government.
Therefore, they can be taken away with a stroke of a pen.
You got
right?
it.
Okay.
And the fact is, our founders understood that we had what? Inalienable rights. Well, if you have inalienable rights, that means, number one, they can't be taken away. And if they can't be taken away, who gave them to you? Well, our rights are God-given. They're God-breathed. We operate under natural law. And that was the framework by which our government was founded. We wrote a constitution not to form a government that gives us rights, but to form a government that secured rights that we already have. And that's a huge paradigm shift in the way that we think today, probably because of progressivism and a European mindset where those governments were not formed that way. They do operate in a system of top-down where your government does give and take away. But that's never been America until now.
Yeah, and I think another piece to that is just the nature of people being consumed by distraction and Netflix. People are comfortable for the most part.
Sure.
So therefore, in their comfort,
don't fix it if it ain't broke.
They don't take time to learn these things, and then when they find themselves stripped of rights, it's like, well, I don't even know how to fight the man anymore. Right. There's a difference in our federal Constitution, and this is something that you've kind of brought to my attention, and our specific state constitutions. And I want to read something. This is right out of, I think, one of the beginning lines of our state constitution.
Yeah.
It says, the government being instituted for the common benefit, the doctrine of non-resistance against arbitrary power being absurd, slavish, and destructive of the good and happiness of mankind. So
that's Article 1, Section 2 of our Constitution.
Man. This is a scholar over here.
It's the second statement.
Yeah, so it's saying the doctrine of non-resistance against arbitrary power is absurd, slavish, and destructive, which right now there is this social pressure. I sat down the other day with a guy that I really like and respect. Politically, we probably fall on different sides of the spectrum. I don't know how that's possible, but we probably do. And he was talking about getting his vaccine. He asked me when I was going to get mine. Just like, hey, this is a matter of fact, you're going to get it. And I said, man, I don't know. He's like, well, you're going to get it, right? I said, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's experimental at this stage. I don't trust the same powers that be that are telling me to get it. I don't trust those institutions. It's all happening so fast. There's a lot of reasons, and we didn't really get into it. But it was I felt this sense from him of, this is your social responsibility. And I've heard that from other people. And right now it seems like the government, I mean, in my era it was Rage Against the Machine.
Yeah.
Now it feels like it's, where's the machine at, so we can listen to whatever it says.
Man, that's good.
And so to me, the Tennessee Constitution speaks directly to the heart of that issue, saying if you don't provide any resistance to arbitrary strokes of a pen from your government, you're crazy. You're a slave.
That's right.
Right?
You couldn't have said it better. And one other thing I would say, the doctrine of non-resistance to arbitrary power is slavish and absurd. The other thing about that is that our Constitution is giving us as Tennesseans a duty. literally prescribing to Tennesseans you have a duty to resist. It's not only crazy if you don't, but you have a duty, a prescribed duty.
Like that's
to
your
do
American.
That's right. That's right.
That's one of your roles. So the big one, Gary, that you've been working on, I know there's been a few bills over the last 3-4 months, but the one that really has gained some traction is SB 320. Is that correct?
Well, yeah, it was gaining traction.
Right. Well, I was there. He did a Gary and Tennessee Stands instituted a rally. Is that how you say it? You held a rally.
Yeah.
And it was very short notice. We probably got 1,000 people there, right?
Yeah.
And went in for the vote, which this is about a week ago. Mm-hmm. That particular vote was positive. It was 8-1 approving of the bill. Can you explain a little bit about the bill, the process, and
there's a lot of SBs and HBs going around. That in particular, we do have an SB 320. That was SB 187.
Okay.
In particular, to secure religious exemptions to vaccines here in Tennessee. What a lot of we've always known for a long time that we've got religious exemptions to these vaccines. In fact, the landscape has changed a little bit, but for certain, we have over 45 states in the U.S. right now where these religious exemptions exist. Problem is, in the state of Tennessee, the way the law is written, in the case of an epidemic or the threat of an epidemic, those religious exemptions are null and void. And right now, the powers that be would say we're in an epidemic. So you don't have religious exemptions to vaccines. This bill was an effort to secure that right and strike that epidemic exception so that you had religious exemptions all the time, no matter what. And shockingly, in the state of Tennessee, that has been a very difficult thing to pass. We've had some struggles with the bill, which is why we held the rally. We get into the committee room, and what happens is they, as happens in these committee hearings, they ask questions, and 30 minutes later, you're not even talking about the bill anymore. Nobody knows what they're talking, and everyone's so confused, which is the point, right? Because you get off the topic, that they recess. They go back into what they call the cloakroom. They amend the bill to the amendment to the amendment to the amendment. So now what you come out with is almost unrecognizable to what you went in there with. And that's what passed 8-1. And we thought, well, great, we got 8 votes. This is amazing. How did we do that?
Right, yeah.
Well, the next day, I call the office and I say, hey, can I get a draft of the language of what actually passed? Because we haven't actually read the fine print yet. And wouldn't you know, why did it get 8 votes in committee? Because it does almost nothing. And it's easy to vote for a bill that does almost nothing.
Yeah.
It only secures religious exemptions to a vaccine for COVID. If the epidemic is if it's for this flu or for
a new strain of the virus,
new strain of whatever.
Sure. Yeah.
We're back to square one.
Well, there was a big one, and like you said, I'm learning all the time, but there's a lot of SBs and HBs out there.
Yeah.
Something happened 2 days ago where
that's SB 320.
This is the one about the government cannot mandate vaccine passports.
That's right.
Ron DeSantis down in Florida has made a lot of headlines, but I think he's done what we're hoping Bill Lee would do. Right? Has DeSantis truly taken that step?
He has. He has not only signed the executive order.
So it's possible.
Yeah, it is possible.
It's not like Bill Lee's hands are tied and he cannot do it.
Absolutely not. Okay. But he has also, DeSantis has also challenged the Florida legislature to act.
Okay.
Because we need, we don't want to just rule by executive orders. He did it to provide the protection now, but he's telling the Florida legislature, you need to put this into law.
Okay, so that bill, which SB is that one?
That's SB 320.
So SB 320.
Yeah.
And 2 days ago.
Yeah.
Right? Give us the nutshell version, because I got a big philosophical question to ask you about.
So what happened with that is the governor made a public statement that he was against vaccine passports and that he believed that taking the vaccine for COVID was a personal choice. Mm-hmm. Okay, both of those two statements, phenomenal. Thank you, Governor. However, the bill that he purported that would accomplish that mission is a bill which did pass out of committee, his bill, that only restricts the government from requiring a business to require a vaccine passport. Well, quite frankly, we really weren't under threat of that in Tennessee anyway. as I say over and over again, these bills that pass, they tend to do almost nothing. The real issue is that these mandates aren't coming from governments. They're coming from corporations.
Yeah.
Look at masks right now, for example. We're not under a mask mandate, but we're under the fact that Kroger and Publix and Costco and Kohl's and Panera Bread and all the corporate actors who are making their own policies.
Even like the YMCA,
That's
which
right.
which I've got to. This is an insane story, and I'm sure you guys have experienced something like this. So we got a Y here that's basically mask free at this point. Right here, the Franklin Family YMCA weight room is packed with people. Nobody's wearing a mask except the workers. I walk in and they get the big sign like, please wear a mask. But no, I look in there and the only people wearing a mask is the lady at the front desk and the workers. No one else. I walk in, I want to go get my workout in. The weight room is 10 feet from where I walk in. I go up and the lady kind of, apologetically asks, hey, do you have a medical exemption for not wearing a mask? And I was like, no. And I kind of made a point to look in that weight room. And she goes, I know it's a little weird, but here, you need to wear this, and hands it to me. And just
for the next 10 feet.
Yeah, and I just said, and like other people are walking by me without it on. And I said, can you please explain this to me? And I don't want to make her feel bad. She's just doing her job. I get it, but it's that trickle-down effect of, at some point, like the employees got to go to their, powers that be and just say, we're not going to enforce people to walk in for 10 feet,
Right.
to put a mask on, then to set it down. And it's going to get dirty, and then they
Right.
got to put it back on to walk out. Like, how dumb is that, But that's kind of where we're at, is this just arbitrary rulings. And whether to me, the scary thing is this. With how I feel about the vaccine, I don't think the vaccine would kill me or hurt me. I don't know long-term effects, but I don't want to be a guinea pig for social conditioning. And I feel like it's a first step sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's the corporations that have a very heavy-handed approach.
They've taken the lead in doing the dirty work for the government. And imagine what a perfect opportunity for a government who wants these policies to be enacted to get their way, but be able to be squeaky clean and wash their hands of it because, well, I'm not doing it. It's just private business.
Yeah, and we don't regulate. We're not regulating. So it almost sounds like a veiled version of conservative business ethics from the government, right?
Yeah.
We're not going to regulate businesses.
Yeah.
Which most, right-wing business owners don't want the government to intrude.
So I want to hit on that point because that's the contentious piece that I'm trying to get across. So our bill, SB 320, would have solved that problem. It would have made it discriminatory for a business to require a vaccine or require the use of a passport for entry or for goods and services.
Yeah, just like nation of origin or race creed or whatever.
That's right.
Okay.
Same. It would have made it your medical. What we're saying is your medical privacy is a human right. That's not a right that should be infringed by anyone else, including someone who owns a private business. The argument coming from the conservative establishment is that, well, private property rights, Gary, but you're not a real conservative. You don't understand the free market. You don't understand capitalism. Private property rights. A private business owner should be able to do whatever they want to do. Okay, hang on just a second. They already can't do it. We pretend that businesses all of a sudden in Tennessee have absolute rights and freedom from the government. They don't pay taxes anymore. They don't have to obey building codes anymore. They can turn
the establishment's pretending that to make a point, but it's not true.
That's not true at all. Businesses are regulated. They're heavily regulated. How many licenses does Tennessee require for you to do business in the state of Tennessee? But we don't regulate business.
Sure.
We have 50 licenses that you have to apply for, but we don't regulate business here in Tennessee. What they're really saying is that we believe that businesses have a right to regulate the health care of their consumers. Mm-hmm. And I'm saying, hell no. That's outside of the purview and competency of a business owner, and it has no place in a corporate structure.
So, Gary, based on everything you're saying, I guess I have two questions. The first one is, how long, if things keep progressing as they are progressing, and we don't really see any change or any pushback from Governor Lee or a change of heart, how long is it until I can't go down the road and go into Target to do my shopping because they require vaccine passports as a progressive safety first kind of company, or I can't fly to New Jersey to visit my wife because Delta or United Airlines, they're going to make me flash a vaccine passport? How far away is that?
You will face that challenge before this year is up here in Tennessee.
You believe that?
100%.
Wow.
100%.
That does not feel like the America I grew up in.
No,
obviously
it doesn't.
that's obvious.
No, it doesn't. And by that time, our legislature will now be out of session, unable to address it legislatively, and will be dependent upon a governor now to make an executive order to fix it, who so far is proving that he has no intention on doing that whatsoever.
That leads me to my second question. So, being a Tennessean, I've met Bill Lee. I don't know him personally, but I think, okay, here's a business owner that started small, built a huge company, got notoriety from that. He dipped his toes in the water of politics and was elected governor.
Yeah.
And you'd think, okay, this is the kind of guy that I want to be governor because he's actually done something in the real world. He's not a career politician or a community organizer. He knows how to get things done. Right. But then we see these evidences of being willing to not protect our rights as citizens, veiled though it may be. Why you did mention something about the chambers of commerce, but that or for other reasons, why would this be? It's confusing to me.
That's a great question.
Okay.
The only thing I can say is, Rush Limbaugh used to affectionately call the Chamber of Commerce the Chamber of Commies.
Okay.
That was his term. We've known for quite a long time that chambers of commerce are typically, making a blanket stereotypical statement here, but typically very progressive organizations. They usually don't work for small business. They work for big business. They're funded by large corporate donors. You can actually trace, if you want to know why many of our school boards are turning so progressive, many of those progressive school board candidates have been funded and pushed by chambers of commerce under the guise of, better schools and better education in terms of boosting real estate values in the economy. And you can sort of see how all that begins to connect. And well, you don't want to have, you don't want your schools to be too conservative because then you push out the big business like the Amazons and the Facebooks, and it's all interconnected. And so unfortunately here in Tennessee, we've got a lot of that going on in terms of large corporations and
even Amazon. I mean, they've got big warehouses in Murfreesboro.
Facebook's got a massive data center now in Sumner County. Just
a lot of that's probably due to taxes here, right?
That's correct. So you made a good, since you said that, this idea of private property. Well, what about when private property is subsidized by state tax breaks, financed by my tax dollars? So now your private property that I'm subsidizing by tax dollars now has the right to manage my health care. Do you see how?
Round and round we go.
That's right.
Yeah.
And the other thing that is in terms of these bills where you're talking about vaccine passports and religious exemptions to vaccines, how is that so hard to get done here in Tennessee? Well, we are the nation's center for healthcare. And let me tell you, Vanderbilt goes deep, very deep. They were there in that room. Their attorney was there in that room rewriting that piece of legislation that did nothing, along with an attorney from the Tennessee Medical Association, along with an attorney from the Tennessee Hospital Association, along with an attorney from our own Tennessee Department of Health.
What about HCA?
I don't know.
Okay.
They would be represented through the Tennessee Hospital Association. So this is what we're fighting here in Tennessee, and is Governor Lee looking to them more than he's looking to protect the liberties of his constituents? Well, you'd have to ask him that.
It's a good question. So Gary, that's a lot of great insights. And one question I think a lot of people are asking, and myself included, every day this comes about, how do we fight? Because every day you hear about another institution or another group that's come out and done something absurd, whether it's the MLB moving the All-Star game out of Atlanta based on people having to flash voter ID, which you got to have a voter ID, or not a voter ID, but an ID to get in the stadium in the first place or to buy a beer. It's offensive to me, especially as a baseball player. But we're fighting a Goliath. And in the conservative and Christian circles that I run in and the people that I talk to, I kind of see two main channels of thought. One is, hey, we were told in the Bible that this was going to come, and now we're seeing it. And persecution is not all bad, it's because it's foretold to us.
Right.
So let's kind of marginalize ourselves. Let's get out of the culture at large. Let's not fight like what you're doing, and let's teach our children how to learn to be second-class citizens. Even though we don't like it, it's part of the deal. The other side is more, if they're not just burying their heads in the sand and not paying attention, it's more your approach and what I hope is my approach, and that's to fight, and to fight now. Do you have any thoughts on that, on what the approach should be, especially from maybe a biblically informed worldview?
Yeah, so this idea that, well, we're in the last days, Revelation, all this stuff, and maybe we should just, we're in the end times, and the end is coming anyway, and Jesus is coming back, so let's just wait on that to happen. There is nothing in the Bible, and no commandment from Scripture that supports that. Yes, there is an end, but that's never been the call to the believer. The call has always been, be bold, be courageous, stand firm in the faith.
Like, do not fear is one of the number one things that the angels of the Lord and Jesus said, right? Do not
That's
fear.
right. Jesus said, I've come to give life, and life more abundantly. He gave us a charge in Luke 19 to occupy until I come. And that's an interesting phrase, because what was happening in that moment is that the disciples and Jesus were walking into Jerusalem. And the disciples had already experienced all of these miracles and the Son of God and all this. And they're thinking, as they're walking into Jerusalem, they're thinking that we're approaching the end. This is almost it. Mm-hmm. Jesus, of course, being who he is, recognizes that and speaks right to the heart of the matter and says, hey, wait a minute, this is not the end. Your job, I'm going away, but your job, occupy until I come. And one of the translations of that word for occupy is also do business.
Really?
Do business. Some translations don't say occupy, it says do business. The point is, I'm not back. He's not back yet. I haven't seen him come back yet. So do business. Okay. Keep doing. Keep pushing. Keep building. Keep persevering.
Let me ask you a practical question, because that is such great advice and a great wording of it. But if you're just the common parent, you don't know a lot about politics, the last thing you would know how to do is to go create a nonprofit like Tennessee Stands and go kind of fight the man and ensure our rights are protected. Most people don't know how to do that, myself included. Reading the Tennessee Constitution, that was a big thing for me to understand what my actual rights are. But what is some advice you would give to someone who they don't like what they're seeing, especially in terms of education for their kids or business? They don't want to have to flash a vaccine passport to go shop at their favorite store.
Right.
What advice do you give them in terms of occupy? Because they may not know how to do business like you know how to do business. How do they occupy?
You've got to show up when there are opportunities to show up and confront. We have to stop complying with arbitrary rules. That is one of the main things I see right now, is that these rules that we're under draw their authority from our compliance. Mm-hmm. That has always actually been the case in America. Our government is one that has always drawn its legitimacy from the consent of the governed. So if you're willing to consent to laws and rules that are unconstitutional, well, by God, it doesn't really matter if they're unconstitutional, because you are consenting and complying to them. And we have to stop that. That's challenging here in Tennessee, because one of the great things about Tennessee is the people. And the people, we're kind, mm-hmm. we're helpful, we're Tennesseans. We want to do things together. We want to be helpful. All these good things. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I'm not saying that we should change that. However, in that, we have to be willing to push back against those things that go against the laws of nature, that go against the laws of God, and that go against the principles of the government that we founded here in Tennessee. We have to, in our kindness and compassion, also demand that our elected officials limit their authority to only that which they have been given by the Constitution. Otherwise, we don't have a legitimate government, and we don't have a Constitution, and we no longer have a we the people. We just have a we the government.
That's right.
And we cannot go there.
Does part of do not comply mean don't wear a mask if you're like at the Y the other day, that story I told? It made me feel really just angry that she's like, put this mask over your face even though there's no chance you're going to die.
Yeah, that's right.
To walk 10 feet and take it off. And my kindness, the Tennessee boy in me, I didn't want to make her feel stupid, but I had to say something.
Yeah.
And I put it on out of, she asking me to, and I'm working out there. But just complete compliance all the time, obviously that is how they're deriving their power. But what do you see in that situation or in any situation where you feel compelled to do something that just goes against common sense, even if you don't know the law, goes against your common sense?
Don't do it.
Don't do it.
Leave. Go do some. Go
do
work,
business somewhere else.
Work out at your house if that's your only option. But we cannot continue to just go along with this because it's our only option.
Okay.
We have to create other options.
So Gary, we've talked about a lot today, and when it comes to a place to start, Tennessee Stands, I really come to respect you guys' organization. How does a person begin to get involved, let's say, with that organization to learn what you're doing and how they can help?
Yeah, so definitely visit TennesseeStands.org. Subscribe to our email list. That's a big one. We're very active. You need to be in the know. When you subscribe to our email list, give us your physical address. That's key. I know people don't like to do that. Our system is set up to take legislative action in various key races across the state, various pieces of legislation. If we know where you live, then we know who your state representative is. We know who your county officials are. And so we can help you take action in really key aspects of the issues that we're fighting.
So not just in terms of, COVID mask mandates or vaccine passports. You're talking about for future, it could be a large scale.
We're continuing to fight any issue that we feel infringes upon a constitutionally secured liberty and an overreaching of government beyond the powers which it's been given by our Constitution. The other big thing, we talked earlier about doing business, about occupying. One of the things that we've been challenging people across the state is men and women have got to run for office. And if I've learned anything through COVID, it's that local politics matter. Who sits on your county commission and who sits on your school board matters. And those people have a lot of authority over those local decisions being made, all the way from curriculum to how that particular school district is responding to COVID. And all the different regulations that are in place. Too often, people, they run to the polls to vote for governor or to vote for the president.
And that's it.
Yeah. But how many, and I know this has happened to you, it's happened to every American. You get to the poll, to the ballot box, and it's like District 15, this position, and you've never even heard of this stuff before. And so you've now got to vote for this thing. And here's the worst part about it. There's only one name. Nobody's even running. You hit the button and you hit next.
You voted on the guy that's going to get it anyway.
We can't do that anymore.
Right.
People need to know what that position is, what it does, and there should be 3 or 4 names there. And people need to be running for office. We need people who love the Constitution, people who love the Lord, people who understand liberty, people who want to secure that for our future. We need them running for office. So Tennessee Stands, we're going to be starting a PAC, getting very active coming up into local races going into 2022. We'll have some activism retreats across the state where people can learn how to run for office, what it looks like to run a campaign.
Yeah, because that was another question. It's like a lot of people, they would like to, they might have a lot of patriotism and love our Constitution and our freedoms, but they just think, myself included, I would not know how to start that. But you're saying you
follow Tennessee Stands.
Okay.
We will show you the way.
That's awesome.
And we will help you, and we'll fight with you.
That's fantastic. One other thing, subscribe to the Tennessee Stands YouTube channel. This man gives on-the-fly updates, even like from your backyard, on stuff going on, big breaking news, which that's really cool. You're not waiting for a studio and lighting. It's just like, here's what happened.
It's got to happen, man.
And you're not afraid to get a little pissed about it too. I love it, man. I love it.
Somebody's got to get mad. Look, I mean, I know
it's righteous anger.
So I was on a radio show yesterday morning, and the host introduced me as the thorn in their side, and I said, "Huh?"
In their own radio station.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm good with that.
Yeah.
No, not the thorn in the red, the thorn in the General Assembly
Okay,
side. Yeah, we
yeah.
were talking about the legislature, and he said, then this is the thorn in their side. I'm like, yeah, I'm okay with that.
That's a good job title.
That's right.
Thank you, man. I've really appreciated it.
Appreciate
I've learned a lot, as always. Guys, thank you for joining us today on JSlay, Made in the USA. I'm looking forward to our future interviews with other patriots like Gary Humble, who are not afraid to stand up, speak out, get mad, because right now in our culture, that's just what it's going to take. So, Gary, once again, very much appreciate your time.
Yeah.
Thank you, brother.
Thanks for having me.
All right.